Well, like Tatiana, I'm delighted to be here in this lovely little boutique on the Hans Plains Road. Never been here before. It's wonderful. I encourage you all to come. My story is a mental health story, and it's about my daughter, who is now 42, and she had a normal, healthy life up until the age of about 18, and then she was struck with a very severe, unrelenting mental illness that resulted in her being institutionalized for the most of 15 years. So when she came out of the hospital in her late 30s, she had missed all the things that happen to us when we're in our 20s, all the social development that goes on and so on. So she had a pretty rough time, and then she came home in 2008. She's been home ever since, and she's actually doing really well. She spent 7 years in the hospital undiagnosed, and at first we were told that we were at fault, that it was parenting because they couldn't figure out anything else. We knew that wasn't true, so we stuck with her, of course. And then 7 years into her hospital life, a very astute young doctor in Dartmouth asked us if genetics had ever looked at her, and we said no. And so they referred her to the genetics department at the IWK, and she was diagnosed with a syndrome called, it's a long one, microdeletion 22q11.2, which simply means, it's 22q for short, we call it. But it just means that a little tiny piece is missing on the long arm of the 22nd chromosome. And people who have microdeletion 22q11.2 can have any of 180 different symptoms, any variety, depending on which part of the chromosome is missing. You'll come up with a different set of symptoms. So many of the kids that get this are picked up these days. It's only been known about since the late 70s, I think. But these days they sometimes pick up children that have this diagnosis when they're born, because they're often born with heart defects. That's one of the most common things, which my daughter did not have. Or they may have palate problems, a lot of neurodevelopmental delay, lots and lots of organ system failures, and lots of surgeries, and multiple disabilities. But we didn't have any of that. So she got what 25% of them get, which is the psychiatric side of it all. And it only became apparent when she hit her late teens. So it started with a little bit of depression and then evolved into a psychosis, which was very, very difficult to treat for a long time. So a lot of people, so I left work when she came. I gradually cut my work back, and I left work when she came home to be her full-time caregiver. So I went from being a paid professional to being an unpaid professional with many skills that I drew from my previous work careers. And it's been a lot of fun seeing her develop and grow. But people often ask me, and I'm sure they ask all the other authors in these books too, how did you ever manage, or how did you do it, or I couldn't do that. And I think like Tatiana said, it does basically come out of love. You love your kids, you just do the best you can. But not everybody is able to rise to the occasion, I know. And I think writing has always been one of the things that helped me. I've done a lot of writing, not all of it has been published, but a lot of cathartic writing. And it helps you to kind of work things out in your mind to a degree as to how you get through it all. And I think all the stories in this book are about resilience. And I'm not sure where it comes from, but I think if you asked every author in the book, how did you become so resilient? I think they'd all have a different answer to some degree. It might all come down to love for everybody, but I think there are other factors too that differ from one person to another. So when I look back, I think about resilience coming from maybe initially, you set out in life wanting to do good in the world, but you always come against obstacles, and there might be small obstacles, but you find ways to get around them, and you work at being unstuck. So getting stuck is a good experience, and I think my husband and I had a lot of experiences getting stuck because we lived in developing countries for a long time, where we lived with extreme poverty and unsanitary conditions, and seeing people around us with, living in very dire circumstances. We learned a lot in those situations, and when my daughter became sick, I think looking back at our experiences overseas and also some of the experiences I had working in a hospital myself with people with chronic pain, I knew that getting unstuck somehow meant just stopping for a minute and looking to see what small shift I could make. So it's always about making very small changes so that another door opens. And so, for example, I can think of lots of little things, and they don't seem very important, but at the time they were. Like, for example, my daughter's very artistic, and the one thing that kept her going in hospital was having papers and pens around her and pencils. But she just sort of scribbled the same thing. She lost her art skills, and it just kind of came down to scribbles. So I've got to somehow maximize the use of papers and pens. So one day we took in great big pieces of poster paper and colored pencils, and my husband and I and my daughter encouraged her to draw on these bigger sheets, so the small change of going from a small piece of paper to a big piece of paper. And then we all drew, but we all drew with our left hands. And it ended up being a series of very funny cartoon figures that went up on the wall that led to all kinds of discussions with the nurses and doctors and people who came in. And a lot of humor came out of it, and it kind of lightened up her whole world of art and started her working again on her art. Slowly, not exactly that day, but it was one of the things that kick-started her interest. Another one was Terry. This was from you. I think I've told you the story before, but Terry is here, and she spoke at the UU Church one day and brought in scarlet runner beans.
Seeds of hope.
Seeds of hope. And I went home with this seed, and I thought, well, I wasn't thinking too much about the hope factor, but I looked at it and I thought, my gosh, this seed is so beautiful. Mm-hmm. And my daughter loves, when you open up a chestnut this time of the year, how the seed is all like mahogany. It's so beautiful. Mm. I looked at the seed and I thought, she's going to love this. Mm-hmm. So I took it over, and she did love it. She loved the textures and the colors, and I thought, maybe we could plant this. And she was a lover of nature and flowers and gardening and all that kind of thing. So anyway, the end of this story is that this little runner bean was planted in a pot, and she didn't want anybody else to know about it. She didn't want anybody to know about that side of her. And it grew into this massive vine full of great big red scarlet flowers. It was gorgeous. It was incredible because her window faced the sun, and it was sheltered. And that opened up a whole series of other activities that were very healing
for her. You were saying how people used to come into her room just to see the seed, and it would spur on conversations with people.
Eventually, at the beginning, she wouldn't let anybody say it, but later on, both the art and the flowers were like, whoa, what happened to this room? Yeah. And so it opened up conversations. So over the years, I changed quite a bit. I used to be very exuberant and outgoing, and I'm really not anymore. I'll just read a little bit from the end of my story about how I changed, because I think that might be one of the bigger lessons, I guess, and where my gift in all of this was. My circle of friends is smaller and includes only those who truly understand when I have to cancel a date at the last minute. For the most part, my true friends are people who have either experienced a mental health crisis or are close to someone who has. I've let connections go and have lost some conversational skills in certain scenarios. And I often choose to disregard chance opportunities to reconnect in order to keep my own stress level low. But I see this as a positive, having the wisdom to choose what is healthy for me. These changes to a quieter, more introverted life may be because I've had to tone down my exuberant nature in order to connect better with someone who is ill. Or it may simply be that I haven't had the time to explore the way I once used to as an actress and world traveler. Sometimes I miss the adrenaline rush of that life, but I'm equally happy to sit on a rock and enjoy a sunset. My daughter has given me the gift of knowing how to sit quietly for a long time, breathe deeply and slowly, and simply be with whatever is. And sometimes those simple things in the moment were all I had to offer her, and they helped both of us. There are other gifts as well. My 2 other children have become sensitive, loving souls who know how to approach someone in pain. They've touched people. And through this journey, I've been able to support others who are living with someone going through a crisis. or be with people going through their own breakdown. Even my daughter recognizes other people's pain and frequently gives food, money, and comforting words to the homeless, encouraging me to do the same. I'll stop there. Feels like the right place to start. I'll be happy to take some questions.
Now, your daughter, you have a divided house, right? She lives in an apartment?
Yeah, we have a 3-story house, and the ground floor was a rental unit. And we lived on the 2nd and 3rd floor. And when she got out of hospital, the rental unit was actually available. And the hospital staff said that she should be, they wanted to discharge her to an institution that was locked, a locked facility. And we were shocked because we had been taking her out and seeing so much possibility. And we said, no, there's no way. And we were right. So she lives downstairs in the apartment. And we've been gradually separating. It's been a long, long, slow process. And now she has a service dog, a big chocolate poodle, who takes her out when, instead of me taking her out, she goes with him. In small stages, so it's getting, thank you.
Classic.
Yeah, so she has her independence down there, and there are some days when we're very connected and spend a lot of time together, thank you. And there are other days when she says, could you just go do the laundry or something? Asks me to leave, which is really quite nice.
There's politics in mental health in this province.
Politics and mental health. I'm so delighted to see that, I don't know how many of you noticed, there's a mental health corner in this shop with all kinds of things meant to raise money for mental health. It's just, when you go into the first room, by the front door on the left-hand side. Yeah, politics and mental health, it's, there isn't, I don't have all the statistics in my head, but it's pretty dire how low the budget is for mental health. And I still go to the support society, support group for people who have someone with mental illness. It's put on by the Schizophrenia Society of Nova Scotia, but it's for anybody that has mental health issues. And I'm still struck every time I go by the stories that are very similar to mine, even though there is a bit more money and there's better training. One of the things that has changed a lot is in the police force. They are now well trained to deal with mental health problems. We've had to call the police a number of times, and the difference from the first visit to the last visit is unbelievable, unbelievable. It's gone from being brutal to being compassionate.
You know, our police chief is very outspoken that he suffers from PTSD.
Well, there you go. See, it comes from that knowledge base. Yeah, no, the police are wonderful. There's still a lot of stigma among health professionals, and it's still very difficult sometimes to be a patient unless you happen to be an extremely well-behaved patient, and then you're okay. Yeah, it's very difficult.
So you've been advocating for mental health awareness and improvements over the last few years. I know you've been very passionate and outspoken about that.
Yeah, when my daughter was in the hospital, of course, I had more time, and one of the ways that I felt I could contribute, if I couldn't do anything for her, at least I could try and get onto different committees and try to make some changes in the system. So I was involved in putting out some literature for the public, and I was involved in Psychiatric Standards of Care Committee and various other groups where we worked hard to try and work on decreasing stigma and increasing funds and getting better training in place. Yeah, a lot of good things have happened.
That's the gift that you've given our whole society,
Yeah, maybe.
stemming from Kenny's condition.
Well, large groups of people are working hard. Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, it's difficult too for parents because they're exhausted, you know, and yet that's where the drive has to come.
Yeah.
But it's like I'm sure it's the same for people that have children with cerebral palsy or anything that's very time consuming, takes up most of your energy. It's hard to be an advocate sometimes.
What would you say to other parents whose children are struggling with mental issues, health issues right now? What would you say to parents?
I think think the most important thing is the communication with the healthcare professionals, and it's very hard when you're upset and things aren't going well just to remain calm. But if somebody if you feel that you're not getting an appropriate treatment, you need to speak up for your child and say so, and ask for somebody else, to turn to a different department or to go higher up. I know for me, when things were really, really tough, my daughter was in one of our psychiatric hospitals here, and it was a pretty abusive situation, and I got angry, and that didn't work, of course. I was very, very hurt and very angry, and I tried to deal with the immediate staff around me. I wasn't in a good frame of mind. And then I tried to go to the patient representative and sort of people one step beyond, and that didn't work either because they were defending the staff. And for me, what worked was going to the media. And boy, did things happen fast after that.
Yeah.
They went to the TV and the newspapers and the radio, got lots of interviews. And as soon as I did that, the head honchos from the hospital stepped up and said, she's right, we have problems. And they moved my daughter to a new place. So I think it's always trying to, like I said before, when you're thinking about resilience, it's that little shift, like, okay, this isn't working, who else can I talk to? And you just keep looking until you find somebody who's compassionate and understands and can open a door for you.
How's your daughter now?
She's great. She's stable. She was psychotic for many, many, many